morning if you are joining us in another time zone, or watching the webinar replay. And welcome to Plan Tracker's NDIS Cuppa questions this week with a very exciting focus on the new price guide that's launched. And once again, joining me here is our amazing founder and managing director, Elisa James. Elisa, do you want to take a moment to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Mel. For those that we haven't met yet on webinars, as Mel said, my name's Elisa, and I have the huge privilege of looking after Plan Tracker and our team and all our amazing customers through Plan Tracker. So pretty excited to see the new price guide out. Well, it's not really new, is it? It's really more of an update. And pretty excited to see some of the announcements that have come through that we're going to talk about today. So there we go.
Fantastic. And I know one of the biggest questions with the new but not so new is what on earth has changed and what stayed the same? And have any of these COVID interim amendments, if we like, that were kind of coming out left, right and centre at us, have any of them hung around to stay? So stay tuned. We're going to be going through all of that and more for you here today. We've also got some exciting updates with the new plan management guidelines being released for the first time from the agency. So lots of content to get through. I'm just going to start with a little bit of housekeeping for everyone. So if you've joined us before or you haven't, just hang around for one moment. If you'd like to ask any questions, we have the lovely Justine from Plan Tracker in the chat box and the Q&A. So if you are using the chat function and you're happy to share your questions with everyone, please make sure you are messaging to all panelists and attendees. Otherwise, the only people seeing it will be the three of us. So we'd love to share the conversation and keep it going. If you'd like to share where you're joining us from here today, we'd love to hear from you. I know we've got lots and lots of registrations for today's session. It's obviously a popular topic everyone's waiting to hear about, oh my word, lost with my words there.
I think it's these long weekend weeks, Mel.
It must be. It definitely must be. Alrighty. And we will also, last piece of housekeeping there is to let you know we are recording today's session. So we will make the replay recording available to you if you're watching the live session and you want to grab another cuppa later on and jump back in and revisit any of the content from today. Of course, if you've registered for the webinar replay, you'll find all of the links that we mentioned. We'll be sharing them in the chat box as we go along live. If you're on the replay page, just scroll down to the bottom and you'll find those links below. All right, Elisa, are you ready to jump in? Because we've got so much to get through.
I am. Are you going to kick off the slides?
I definitely am. Just let me grab those for everyone. All righty. And we'll go into present. Just give me a thumbs up when you can see those on your side, Elisa.
Yep, we're good to go. I'll just move them over from my other screen. So hang on a second.
All right, well, while Elisa's moving them, I'll just refresh for everyone. So NDIS Cuppa questions. There's lots of questions that have been asked by the community and also that we at Plan Tracker as a registered NDIS plan manager have come across in our support of all of our customers and wonderful support coordinators and fellow providers that we work alongside. So we're going to be going through all of those questions and more. But Elisa, I thought we'd start with the most important thing, which is obviously headlines. There's lots of dot point lovers amongst us, and I know you're one of them. So I thought we'd start there.
I can't handle whole pages of text. So I'm like, just give me the dot points. Definitely
I love
dot
that.
points.
So this is with you in mind, and I'm sure you're not alone. Dot points. So what's new? What's staying? Obviously, as we mentioned, there is a new price guide, as they're calling it, that's effective from the 1st of October 2020. So this is the new one that was released just before the weekend. We saw this come out. And what we're going to be going through today is kind of what's changed, what's staying the same. So Elisa, do you want to just give us a quick overview of what's been extended?
Sure. So as Mel said, it's kind of a new price guide, but really it's more of an update. So 1st of July is the official price guide, and it's pretty typical during a financial year for the NDIA to make some tweaks along the way to the price guide and make some changes. And so we were anticipating, which is why we booked this webinar in early, that this would be no different this year, and that at the end of the first quarter we'd see some of that just bit of refining, making sure any issues with the price guide were updated. So that's happened, which is good. And over the weekend, all of those prices have been updated on the portal. So everything is effective from the 1st of October 2020. The key big areas, and we're going to go through them today, and the one that we are super excited about at Plan Tracker is the extension of support coordination in core. So in other words, having support coordination continue indefinitely, which is fantastic. So I won't say any more about that. We'll get there when we get there. Also, well, I don't know that there are lots of great things that have come out of COVID, but one of the things that has come out of COVID that's been really helpful for a number of people is telehealth or teletherapy. And so as part of the extension is the extension of the being able to claim a device like an iPad or a tablet, that type of thing, in order to be able to continue your therapy from home. That has continued at this stage. We'll talk about the specifics of how long that will be there, but that's good to see that that's in place both in capacity building and in core. PPE for some areas only, for those areas that are still battling with COVID at the moment, then PPE has been extended as an area that can be claimed. And they're really our major kind of COVID continuation, if you like. There's been a little bit of an update around SIL, supported independent living, and we'll talk in more detail when we get there.
Fantastic. All right. Well, I know you're excited to jump into our first topic. And as you can see from our lovely emoji there, we're very excited at Plan Tracker to see the extension. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. That's not helpful. The extension of support coordination. So obviously this is support coordination under the core funding category, or core funding budgets, if we like. Elisa, what exactly does it mean by indefinitely?
So indefinitely hopefully means indefinitely. It means that the agency hasn't put a review date on this change, which is previously, when support coordination line items were introduced to core, the agency put a review date of the 30th of September, which meant that it became quite tricky for support coordinators and participants to know, am I going to be able to continue to access this support? Do we have to stop this great work that's happening right now? What's going to happen? And so the agency were a little slow in coming through to let everybody know where that was up to, but did come through and have acknowledged that this new way of operating, where support coordination is available in core, will continue indefinitely, which is fantastic.
Lovely. Thank you for clarifying that. And I wanted to start, obviously, this conversation as well. I believe you've got some thank yous to say to a few individuals and organisations. Did you want to just give them a shout out before we jump in?
Definitely. Thanks, Mel. So, I mean, support coordination, for those who might not have come across it before, is the ability to engage a professional called a support coordinator, whose job is to help you as a participant to connect with services, and they can do as much or as little of that as you need. It also might be able to help you explore things like housing options or alternative living arrangements, or help you with areas where, maybe moving and transitioning into work and some of those new connections. So support coordinators are hugely helpful. And support coordination has, until COVID, was funded exclusively as a separate budget, which meant that you had to request it, you had to ask, and it was a reasonable and necessary assessment by the planner to see if you as a participant needed support coordination. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment, but one of the things that happened because of COVID was that more people needed support to be able to connect with different supports. Life didn't look the same, but the support needs were still there. And so having support coordination available to claim from core has meant that more people have been able to claim support coordination. So even though you might not have had it in your budget originally, it was then available. And I just wanted to do a huge shout out and thanks to Sam Payoa and her team at the Growing Space, who I know Sam has campaigned tirelessly for this extension to stay, and really pushed hard at lots of levels within the agency and other spaces to help make sure that this fabulous change is actually staying in place. So thank you, Sam. We appreciate you and all that you and your fabulous team do. Also thanks to DIA, Disability Intermediaries Australia, which is our peak body for plan managers and support coordinators, who's also taken up the baton and really been running and lobbying and negotiating with the agency around this space. So it's just great to see that some of these really positive changes are staying in place, and these are the things that make a big difference.
Fantastic. All right. And Justine, I might just invite you to pop a link for the DIA website in the chat box for everyone, and we'll include that on the replay page as well. If you are a support coordinator or a plan manager looking to learn more about the peak body in the industry, that is definitely the website to go and check out. Now, Elisa, questions on everyone's mind, and I know this one's come up a bit since the COVID implementation of these changes of seeing support coordination funded under the core budgets. Can I use a registered or a non-registered provider?
So Mel, the answer to that, of course, depends on how your plan is funded, how your plan is being managed. And so if your plan is agency managed, then you're restricted to only using agency registered providers, and that includes support coordinators. If your core funding is being either plan managed or self-managed, then of course you've got lots of flexibility and you're able to engage with either registered or non-registered support coordinators. And when we say registered, we mean registered with the NDIA.
Fantastic. I love that clarity. I think it's really important that we always revisit these things because there's been so many changes, let's be honest. It's very easy to miss a small detail that can be actually really important in terms of flexibility. So really great clarity there. Now, in terms of how a support coordinator can help me, if I'm a participant, do you want to just recap and run us through how a support coordinator kind of functions as a role in terms of my NDIS plan?
For sure. And look, again, because everybody's plan and everybody's circumstances are different, there is a lot of flexibility in what we see. So this is very general kind of ideas around what we've seen support coordinators be able to contribute. But the sorts of things, they have a lot more time that they can come and spend with you to work out, to help together, I guess, identify what are the areas where you're looking to gain more support, to maybe find some different supports, maybe fix some things that aren't working in terms of how you're using your funding. And so they can often do a lot of that thinking process and planning process, as well as then actually help you connect. And that can be as simple as pointing you in the right direction or doing some of that legwork for you. Again, depending on the level of funding that you're wanting to allocate for support coordination or have allocated if it's from the traditional budget, and also the level of your need. One of the, I think we can talk later, Mel, about, or I'll mention it now, the NDIA actually did a reach out to the community and said, we'd like some feedback on support coordination. And DIA and others were able to put in a solid submission back to the agency about ways to really bring quality of service and definition around what support coordination is and does. One of the really great and interesting things about that was that traditionally, before we had support coordination in core, only a small percentage of, in the 40s, around the 40% mark of people actually had support coordination in their plans. With this change to being in core, it's meant that anybody with core can then go ahead and use support coordination. And there's actually been identified that some of the advantages might be, even if you don't have complex need necessarily, but you might just be, hey, I'm new to all of this doesn't make a lot of sense, I need some help to get going. Support coordination can make a significant difference to how you're able to use your funding and to be able to, think outside the box and just get those right. Am I headed in the right direction? Can I claim this? Can I not claim this kind of thinking?
Fantastic. And I love the fact that you've actually just answered Cassie's question there. So Cassie, I hope that was helpful for you.
I'm not allowed to read. So I'm not allowed to read the chat, Cassie, because I get distracted and then I'm not listening to Mel. So I'm happy that we managed to cover that off for you.
Fantastic. All right. Now, the other conversation we often have, and I know I had this with Sarah from the Plan Tracker team a few weeks ago in another session, is finding the right fit. Obviously, we've talked about that in previous sessions with regards to finding the right fit for support workers and adding to your team. But obviously, whether you're looking for a support worker, support coordinator, or a plan manager, finding the right fit for your team is very important. So, Elisa, do you have some tips on where we can find support coordinators if we are looking for one?
Yeah, for sure. So look, first thing is if you are looking for a support coordinator and your plan is plan managed, then ask your plan manager. We as plan managers work really closely with a range of support coordinators across the country. And we're regularly impressed by the quality of service that support coordinators provide. So if you're plan managing with us, we're more than happy to recommend if we know somebody in a space. If you or ask your own plan manager, or look to your LAC, they may also be able to assist you. Talking to other your therapists and other providers, often they may have worked or have come across a local person who's providing support coordination services as well. So they're all good spots to start. Then of course, if you don't can't go any further than that, Google is always great too, to look for your local area. But keep in mind, and I think I'm going to cover the last point here, it doesn't always have to be face-to-face. When we talk about fit, you might find that you just get on well with somebody who's not in your area but can do still a lot of that support coordination work for you. And we've got a number of Plan Tracker customers who do all of their support coordination using virtual support coordinators. Obviously, they're real, they're just not in the same space. Yeah, but you also might find that you need a specialist. You might find that the local people are great with local knowledge, but you're needing information around, say, a transition period in life or around a particular area of need like accommodation. And so looking for somebody who's a specialist in that space can often be a better better use of your efforts, I guess, in that time.
Lovely. And to everyone who's asking all of the extra questions in the chat box, Justine is doing her very best to keep up with you. And I think Justine's actually on top of it now. So just watching that going along. And definitely, as Elisa said there, whether it's face-to-face or virtual, that's really a personal preference. It's finding someone that works in for you and your family and your life. So it really is about choosing what works best for you. And something we often see online as well is conversations in, say, Facebook community. So we at Plan Tracker actually run the NDIS Plan and Self-Management community on Facebook. So it's a closed Facebook group. And we get lots and lots of questions in that community around, I'm looking for this provider in this area if I want someone specific to my community, or I'm just looking for a really good, say, support coordinator. And we invite the community to have conversations, and everyone is so active in the community. It is fantastic. So there's always places to connect and ask those questions and really find that engagement and recommendations. I always say word of mouth. If someone's going to say something great about a provider and their personal experience, then it's usually something you can trust. So we like to go with that. But Elisa, the next conversation we've got coming up, obviously we touched on it a little bit earlier because it was the hot topic when COVID hit. So it's low-cost assistive technology. Now, the big thing on everyone's mind when we come to this, and I didn't picture it because I thought, let's do something different, is tablets. So tablets were obviously the biggest kind of, what would we say, the hot topic, if you like. I think we spoke about tablets every week for months. And
we did.
It was, yeah.
and we have a couple of people on our team whose job solely was to look at requests for reimbursement or payment for claims for tablets. So, and I mean, look, it was a really important need, and still is for many participants. That ability to be able to connect with therapists and other support remotely while COVID is still continuing is super important. And so the NDIA has acknowledged that. We like the fact that they didn't change the rules this time round, because for those of you who journeyed through that first part of COVID, the low-cost assistive technology tablet rules did change 3 times in the space of about 7 weeks, by which the end of which we were all like, just pick away, doesn't matter, just pick away. Anyway, so the rules themselves have stayed the same. The great thing is that the ability to claim a tablet for use for teletherapy or telehealth from home is still there, and that will continue until the 28th of the 2nd. Doesn't mean that it's going to finish at that date, it just means it will be reassessed at that date. So when you're looking at claiming, you can claim still from core, so from your consumables funding in core if you have that budget, or from your CB daily living or your therapy budget, from your capacity building budgets. So they're the two places that you would generally claim those a tablet or a device from. The rules, Mel, are still the same as I mentioned a moment ago. So you do need to provide written advice from your therapist, identifying the type of device and why it's required. And we have, I think we've got a pro forma on our website, don't we?
We do indeed. We've actually got a template for everyone, and you don't have to be with Plan Tracker to use this. We created this for the community and with the community in mind. So you can share this with your therapy provider if you are looking to purchase a device through your NDIS funding, and it's a written advice template. So we've taken all the NDIS guidelines and we've created an interactive downloadable PDF. So you can download it, you can do it digitally, you can print it out and do it by hand, and it answers all of the questions that they're going to ask, such as, is this good value? I know we have that question a lot. And does it meet the price limit? So as we've popped on the slides here, obviously there is a price cap, Elisa, of $750. Does that still stand?
It does. I'm not sure the Minister Robert did us too many favours the other day. We were delighted when we heard his announcement that devices were continuing to be claimable, but he wasn't particularly clear about the amounts. The agency, though, has confirmed that, as you may know, if you are plan managing your consumables budget, that the low-cost AT maximum per item price cap is $1,500 per item. Where that differs is still for tablets used for telehealth. So in that case, the price limit is still $750. And that would include being able to purchase a cover or other things.
We've got a great question on this, Elisa, if I might interrupt you there. So Tegan's question is, can a therapy assistant fill in the pro forma? So for example, the template we've just provided everyone in the chat, can a therapy assistant fill that in, or does it have to be the therapy provider themselves?
I think therapy assistants work under the supervision of a therapist. So you're probably best, even if the therapy assistant helps with filling in the details, just to have the therapist sign off on the bottom of it. Just easier, you come back later and there it is clearly saying therapist has signed off, tick the box, all good.
Fantastic, Tegan. I hope that is helpful. Oh, we've just got a thank you from you, so that is helpful there. Thank you, Elisa. Now, I know we've got lots of COVID updates. Are you ready to jump into some of these?
Let's go.
All right. So we've popped them all. I call it a bank on a slide. So we've banked them all up. And for Sarah in the Plan Tracker team, this little elephant is for you. So for anyone who knows Sarah and sees her online, she loves sharing photos of baby elephants on any given day. It's what she likes to on Google at the end of the day. So this little elephant, sometimes referred to as the elephant in the room, all about staying safe and staying safe together, which is really the conversation we've continued to have throughout COVID. And Elisa, we always come back to communication. So having communication with your team, with your loved ones, with your providers, with your plan manager or support coordinator, if you have those roles in place as well, it's very important. Now, PPE was a big one for everyone, especially those in the kind of high community transmission areas that we saw. So we had New South Wales and Victoria, and then Queensland came on board. What's kind of going on with the PPE situation at the moment?
Okay, so personal protective equipment, or PPE, there's a couple of different things happening here. So first of all, the access has been extended for New South Wales and Victoria. So for New South Wales, you can still continue to claim up to the 31st of October this year, so 2020. And in Victoria, that date is now the 30th of November, 2020. So you can still continue to claim there. For Queensland, I think we've ended fully, haven't we there? So
we have
which
indeed.
Is a good statement for Queensland, actually. I don't, that's not a bad thing. How do you claim? Because I've seen that. I wasn't really reading the chat, Mel.
Did you just read the chat?
I didn't read the chat. It just popped up very quickly. So that's a really good question, because actually there's two different ways, and it does depend. It depends on whether who's providing the PPE. So for example, if you are a provider, let's say you are a support worker or a support worker company, and you're providing PPE for your staff going into situations where PPE is needed, then you can actually still put in a claim direct to the agency. and that can be done as a bulk claim. And this was really to help those organisations where they were providing a lot of equipment, but the administration effort required to bill each individual for the PPE was just too cumbersome. So this was kind of an easier way to ease some admin, which was a really good move. So that's in place. You can do that, and you need to be a registered provider to do that, and you would do that through the portal. As a participant, if you are claiming for PPE for yourself, you can put those claims in yourself. Self-managers obviously make their own claim. If you're plan managing, you can put in for reimbursement or however your plan manager works in that space. If you're a support worker billing an individual, you could simply include the cost of the PPE on your invoice to that individual. And obviously, if they're a plan managed participant, then claiming would happen in the same regular way that claiming happens.
Fantastic. So Judy, I hope that was helpful. And as you can obviously see, there's lots of answers to that one question, depending on your provider or how you're accessing support workers, for instance, as well as how your funding is managed if you're working through plan managers, for example. So lots of different avenues. If you still have questions, of course, feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to have a chat about your personal circumstances with you for that. Now, Elisa, another thing that's come about with regards to COVID is questions around what happens if my, say, support worker is diagnosed or tests positive for COVID and they've been, say, in my home. What happens then?
So that's an excellent question, Mel. So there are a couple of things that happen. Mainly around deep cleaning. So where deep cleaning is needed, then obviously you can come in now, and with those COVID rates and those COVID amounts for cleaning can continue. I don't think they've got a date on the review date. It's probably similar to the New South Wales and Victorian dates. So that can happen, which is good. So you can make sure that deep cleaning has happened.
Fantastic. I think that's very reassuring for everyone. Is there any additional funding provided for the deep cleaning?
There is. If you're in your own accommodation, I believe it's up to $300. Am I correct, Justine? Yeah, and Justine is our fabulous numbers person.
Also
and
known
she's
as a price guide nerd.
She's a complete price guide
and you're
nerd.
getting a yes.
Oh,
yes,
thank
that
you.
is correct.
Excellent. And then I believe if you're in SIL, so supported independent living, if that's your accommodation choice, then you can claim not only the cleaning services, but which we've talked about at that $300, but also additional support. So if there's additional support needed to keep yourself safe or others safe in the space, then that's up to $1,200 per day as well to help with that. So the agency's going all out to try and put things in place to make it straightforward, that if, hopefully you don't find yourself in that situation, but if you did, that there's support available.
Definitely. And I think that's, again, it's reassuring to know that the agency is really putting the community first there and going above and beyond to make sure that there are stipulations in place that do protect individuals, especially Justine's just been popping all of that information in dot point form, which Elisa would love, in the chat box for everyone with regards to the one-off as well as the additional supports daily budget. So you'll find all of that across there. Now, Elisa, in terms of additional access or access to additional, ADL and STA, what's changed there?
That is an excellent question, Mel, and I have absolutely no idea. So we're talking quarantine. We're talking about the ability to use some of your funding if you need to quarantine. So it's also worth pointing out that it's really important for, if you do I'm coming to that unfortunate state of being diagnosed with COVID, keep your diagnosis papers there as well, because that will just provide evidence for any future questions around claiming. So there is access, you're able to use your funding for short-term accommodation or extra assistance with daily living costs if you find yourself in that position.
Perfect. And Justine, our lovely price guide nerd, has just added some additional information for us that if you are needing additional funding, you can actually, participants have the ability to access additional funding to gain access to this for the ADL or STA. You do need to contact the NDIA directly on their 1-800 number, and the extension 5 will put you through to the team that you need to speak with in regards to that. So that's for additional funding in response to these. Again, in response, if you do need to quarantine for COVID reasons, then contacting the agency and they can guide you through that process. So nice and easy there. The last one on our list of our kind of bank of COVID updates here is obviously the hospital discharge. Now we've seen an update with immediate access to assistive technology. Is that in regards to devices or above and beyond that, Elisa?
So no, what we're really talking about here, Mel, and it's not necessarily a COVID change, this one, but just a general change for as the scheme matures, we're seeing a lot more of those connections being built between different areas of our community. So for example, justice or health. And this is a good example of where the agency is trying to make it easier for, as people are being discharged from hospital, that they can immediately access the assistive technology that they require, either that purchase or rental, so that they can be safe at home for that first 6 months of being able to get out the door. We know that in the past it's been quite tricky to often get assistive technology approved quickly, and so this is one of those answers, if you like, or an approach to try and make that a little bit of a smoother process.
Okay, fantastic. I always love when the update is a smoother process. That really excites me. So I'm very excited to see that in there. Once again, if you do have questions, feel free to reach out to the agency on their 1-800 number. I'll get Justine to pop up the NDIS 1-800 number for everyone. It's extension 5 for the hotline with regards to COVID changes. So you can always contact the team there as well. But Elisa, I think we might have saved the best for last. So we've been very excited, and there's been a lot of conversations going on behind the scenes. I know Elisa's been involved in quite a few with DIA, so Disability Intermediaries Australia, as part of the board for that peak body. So Elisa, do you want to tell us a little bit about the NDIS Guide to Plan Management and what exactly this is?
Alrighty, so this is probably, this is probably one of the most long-awaited documents that the agency has talked about releasing since, I think October 2018, maybe December 2018. So it's been a long time coming, and as we all know, the scheme is still very, very new, and there are whole new roles and areas that didn't exist prior to the NDIA. Plan management is one of those. Under the previous block funding models, there was no need for plan management. But with the change to individualised funding and individualised support, it's meant that really plan management has been a solution to helping people be able to access non-registered providers. So Joe Blow's cleaning down the road, or the gardening service, or local support workers who might not be NDIS registered as such. And plan management provides that sweet spot between having to do all of your own self-management administration, which is fabulous for those that want to and make that choice, and the other extreme of having the agency do everything but losing the flexibility of using unregistered providers. So this document was really, the agency's goal was to kind of educate, I guess, the community and the sector around what is plan management. It's important to note that this isn't policy, it's a guide. So this is the first kind of step. And when you think about it, it first was written and the first drafts of it were created and ready for publication way back in late 2018. And so since that time, we're now, late 2020. We're late 2020, and the community has moved on, the sector has moved on. When people were new into plan management, systems didn't exist, processes hadn't yet been developed about really great ways to make plan management work for participants and for providers and for plan management. And I think probably from my point of view, I'm excited to see this first document. it's not probably, there's probably some things I would have liked to have seen in there that I haven't, and some things in there that I'm like, well, I'm not sure the agency's kind of really got its finger quite on the pulse of what's happening in the sector. But it's a good starting point. And as always, our goal very much is to help influence so that together we can end up with a scheme that in 20 years' time continues to serve our families, our loved ones, and our community really, really well.
Most definitely. And in your own words, from something I remember very early on, is we're just getting started. And as a community, I think that's really where this document is at. There's obviously things we'd love to see done a little bit differently, but the fact that we have a document after waiting for so long is very exciting.
That's right.
So yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for that. I thought we'd go through kind of on the dot point format for everyone. What exactly we're going to expect. So what should we expect from a plan manager if we're looking for one?
And it's a really good question, Mel. And in fact, one of the things, if you do get a chance to have a read of the document, one of the things that it talks about in there is that there's quite a different experience across the sector for plan managers. The way we plan manage at Plan Tracker might look slightly different to another plan manager. At the moment, plan managers come in all shapes and sizes. You've got some that are quite small and maybe a boutique service in an area and have only a handful of customers. And then you have very large plan managers who rely on a lot more process and technology, etc. And then lots of people and plan management organisations throughout that whole end-to-end spectrum, if you like. So there is a big variety in how plan management works. Before I jump in and talk about some of the key things that the document talked about, DIA, Disability Intermediaries Australia, one of the important pieces of work that we're doing in that space is coming up with best practice models. So in other words, what are the best practice models for the sector? When we advertise, how do we advertise in a way that's clear and easy for people to follow and not confusing? When we process invoices, how do we do that in a way that's timely and make sure that there's good rigor around that process as well? And so there's a big piece of work being done at the moment in that space that will help to inform the plan management sector around practice and process, which I'm pretty excited about. I've said it from day one. If plan managers provide such an important role, there's the independence of a plan manager is super important. If you're using a plan manager, then your plan manager works for you. They're part of your team. They're there to help you. And they can help you by, if you don't want the provider that invoice paid because you've got a question mark about it, then it should be easy to put that invoice on hold. If you've got a question about what rates should be being charged by a provider, then you can ask questions around that as well. And so having a thriving sector where plan managers can successfully operate, not just us, but like large number of plan managers successfully operate, that's a really good thing, and helps us to operate in a way that works well for customers. Because ultimately, that's the beauty of the NDIS, is that participants can become customers, can become consumers, and you can vote with your feet. So that was my long-winded answer, Mel, too.
Say, that was not dot points.
I know, but you've hit me on my passion area, because I am like, it's just so important that we get this part of the scheme right, It really does enable people to have that choice and control, and not just in lip service, but actually exercise it much more easily when plan management works well. So, okay, so what does the document talk about? It talks about what is plan management. It talks about how to access plan management, which you do at your review meetings and your planning meetings. You just simply request it. And then it goes through to talk about how do you get started with a plan manager. And then there's a little bit of information around about what sorts of things plan managers do and should do. So keep in mind, the guide is not prescriptive. It doesn't say as a plan manager, your plan manager must do this. It simply says these are the types of things that we would expect a plan manager to do. So again, Everyone's got to do things slightly differently, but these are the sorts of things you should look for. Mel.
I was going to say, on that hot tip, it's looking for the wording. So they're not NDIS rules for plan management. It's a guide. So it's guidelines of best practice that are recommended for plan managers, but each plan manager will do something different
Yeah,
and have their own
probably not
spin on it.
fully at not fully at the best practice level yet. It's kind of our first draft go, so that we're seeing coming out. So yeah, lots of good opportunity for this space to grow and develop. But the sorts of things that the guide talks about is making sure that you have a service agreement with your plan manager, that you understand how the processing of invoices works. And that's going to look a little different for each plan manager. So if you're moving from one plan manager to another, make sure you check in and work out how that works. So for example, with Plan Tracker, you simply let your provider know that we're plan managing for you, and you ask them to email the invoices directly in to us. In our case, our team then code the invoice using the NDIS Price guide, and we check off against, we've got some pretty clever things that help check off against all the business rules and the price guides, and do you have budget, does it fit the dates, etc., etc. So then in that case, then it's about how do we know that this invoice is valid? How do we know it's real? So what happens, and I can only speak to what we do, but we just simply send you an automated SMS. So you get an SMS that says, hey, we got an invoice from Joe Blogs Cleaning for this date, for this amount. Here's the link. And you can click the link, view the whole invoice. When you've had a look, if it's all okay, no need to do anything. As part of our service agreement with you, if we haven't heard back from you, then the next day it will go in the claim, and then the NDIA will pay that. If that claim's successful, we'll pay the claim overnight, and then the following day the payment will go out to the provider. So the guide has some information in there about how quickly plan managers should make payments once the full claim is received, and other kind of info like that. A couple of the other areas it talks about is statements. So making sure that you receive a regular statement from your plan manager. It's really hard to manage your money and to know where you're up to if you don't get a statement. That's kind of tricky. So again, I can speak to what we do. We have our Plan Tracker app, which is kept up to date with every payment that's been completed, every claim and payment. So you can see on there what's where your balance is according to what's been paid for. We also have alerts. So if your budget reaches if a particular budget of yours reaches under 10%, you'll get an alert from us that says, hey, your CB daily activities, so your therapy budget is under 10% remaining, making sure that you're aware of that. And often we help people to then think about, oh, okay, well, I've got too many months to go. What am I going to do? How will I manage? Or those types of questions. Yeah.
Fantastic. And I think you've missed one off your list there, Elisa, which is actually our weekly budget email alert. So you get a week at a glance email every Sunday evening if you're with Plan Tracker as your plan manager. And that basically is a summary of where each of your individual budgets are up to. So how much you've spent, how much remains. It's a nice overview if you're not someone who wants to log into the app to check that once a week, just delivered nicely into your inbox. And you can also add team members. So if you've got a support coordinator in place, they can not only have access to the app account, but they can receive that email as well via subscription. So they can come in on a Monday morning and know exactly where your budgets are up to, which really helps to start planning for the week ahead. And it's just something that we love. And Elisa, I know that you touched on this before, but for the community, I just want to say you would be so surprised how many conversations that we're a part of for individuals and participants and families who have no idea where their budgets are up to with plan managers. So we really have always advocated to give you more transparency and more information in more formats. So we like to meet you where you're at on this journey, and really we see ourselves as part of your team, as Elisa said before. So Elisa, another thing that I know was in the guide, and I'm sure you might touch on or expand on this a little bit more, but is the ability to change plan managers. So this is a conversation we often see, especially in the online communities where we say, I've got a plan manager, they're maybe not working for me, but I have to wait to the end of my plan to change. Is that true, or can you change midway?
Mel, that's a really good question. And the simple answer is, in the same way that if you are not connecting or not happy with a particular service, like a support worker or a therapist of some type, then you can vote with your feet. You know, under the NDIS, you are a consumer. And so, yes, you can absolutely change plan managers mid-plan. In practice, how does that work? So if for some reason you did want to change plan managers mid-plan, simply check your service agreement that you have with your existing plan manager and then give notice accordingly. Again, I can only speak for us. I think our notice period is 14 days. Is that right, Mel?
It certainly is.
14 days. And really that's just to allow that time to tidy up any invoices that are in process, make sure everything's organised and sorted out. And what happens is when you do leave a plan manager, what they'll do is they'll go into the portal, they will cancel out the 2 service bookings that they have. So they'll have a special plan management service booking, which is where the funding for your plan is kind of allocated to that plan manager so that they can draw down on it as and when required. So when you put an invoice in for claiming, and they'll cancel their standard agreement service booking, which is the booking that pays the plan management setup fee and monthly fees. Now, when you transfer, obviously the setup fee will already have been used, and so your new plan manager is unlikely to be able to claim that. You'll find though, and again, I know we receive a lot of mid-plan transfers where people choose to come across, and you know, we would just wear the fact that we're going to have to do the setup work and the fee has already been gone, because we'd know, we're confident that you'd then choose to stay with us for a long time. So again, go to check out with your new plan manager if they're happy for that situation. And then the new plan manager, once the old bookings are released, they can't do it until those old bookings are released, then the new plan manager can go in and set up those bookings so that they can operate on the account and put the claims in on your behalf. If you've got an invoice and it's for before you changed plan managers, it doesn't matter. As long as it's in the plan dates that the plan manager is managing for, they will be able to claim it. So for example, let's say your core had $10,000 in it at the point when you ended with your last plan manager. That plan manager will close that booking and leave $0 in that service booking. When the new plan manager comes on board, they would set up they'd set up the service booking from the start of the plan to the end of the plan for that $10,000. So even if you incurred the cost before the new plan manager, it doesn't matter as long as it's inside those plan dates.
Fantastic. Now we've got a question, and Richard, if you don't mind, I'm just going to expand this so that it is relevant for everyone, because we get this question a lot, and it's in regards to the next kind of dot point on our list here, which is allocation of funding. So if I sign a service agreement with a provider, does a plan manager have to kind of, if we like, I don't like using this word during COVID, but quarantine the amount for of funding aside? So obviously we get feedback that some plan managers don't do this or don't do this as well as providers would like. What does this look like with Plan Tracker?
So, and this is something that actually, and hasn't really COVID wrecked a few good words?
It definitely has.
Cluster. You can't say cluster anymore either. Ah, dear. Yeah, so and in fact, the new plan management guide does talk about this idea of quarantining or allocating funding as being part of the job of a plan manager. So let's say, it's important to note, so service agreement is an agreement that you create. If you're the participant, you create it between yourself and the provider. You'll have one with your plan manager, but you may also choose to go and create a service agreement with a therapist, for example. So let's use our traditional OT example. So you might have a service agreement that says we agree to purchase 10 sessions of OT between this date and this date for this amount of money. So $193.99 per session, just as a random figure, times 10. So then that would you would want to make sure that you've allocated that $1,933.30. You'd want to make sure you've allocated that and it isn't used for other services. So for us at Plan Tracker, we aren't party to that service agreement you've created with your provider. That's between you and the provider. However, if you either have the provider send it to us or you can send it in yourself. And what we will do is we'll allocate that. So we'll say ABC occupational therapy between this date and this date within the plan is allocated X amount of money. And so as the invoices come in, that will take away from that allocation to the point that allocation's used up. It also means if you accidentally find you've used up your spare unallocated or buffer money, and there's bills needing to be paid, then we'll let you know and we'll say, hey, look, you'll need to reduce your service agreement with the provider in order to be able to claim the amount that you're currently wanting to claim. So it's certainly a good idea to use your allocations, if you want to. Not everybody does. Some people are happy doing that themselves, and that's fine too. The NDIS they're not mandatory that you have service agreements, but they are considered to be best practice.
Yeah, and they also do, which is a big thing we also get, is if it's a service agreement from a provider, they do have to have a termination clause, or the participant can also request to adjust a service agreement. So they're not a lock-in for the full 12 months of a plan. That's actually, you're not allowed to do that. So where Elisa's example just there, if there was outstanding invoices coming in and we alert a participant that they'll need to look at, say, if they've got 2 other service agreements in that budget, they need to look and speak and have a conversation. Again, communication always key with those providers so that they have funding available to pay for any outstanding invoices. Then it is all about this communication. But we at Plan Tracker definitely see ourselves as an essential part of your team. And we like to communicate with you as early as possible and as clearly as possible as to what your options are if those circumstances were to arise for you. Now, we've had another question, Elise. Actually, I've got 2 questions to flow into this before we get to what a plan manager is not, which is definitely important because there's an infamous question in there. With regards to service bookings in the portal and what say a provider or a participant would see, there's often some confusion if you're plan managing that you don't see individual bookings for your different service providers. Why is that?
Yeah, so from a very practical point of view, as a plan manager, we can only book out, we can't make a service booking for an individual provider on the portal. That functionality doesn't exist. So as a plan manager, we would 95% of the time, we will book the whole amount at the category level. So we'll say improved daily living, $10,000. That's the booking. If the agency, if the planner has popped a stated support in your plan where it says you can use this code, they usually don't show the codes in there, but they have the wording of the actual line item, and it'll say in great big capital letters stated support. If there's a stated support, we'll have to do the booking at that stated support item level. But often where people get confused is they think that a plan manager is able to say, hey, ABC OT has allocated this amount in the portal. It just is, you can't do it. That functionality doesn't exist. All of those allocations must be done by the plan manager in their own back-end systems. And, being a new sector, new area, we certainly have invested heavily in our IT. We have a team of lovely IT geeks who look pretty much like IT geeks. There's a lot of black t-shirts.
I think they'll take that as a compliment at this point.
They're fabulous. Exactly. We like them like that because they're great at what they do. But it does mean that we have systems in place that we've purpose built to be able to do that allocation and allocation tracking.
Wonderful. So Richard, I hope that does answer the couple of questions you were asking in there. So as a plan manager, we create individual service booking for the plan management. So it's like drawing one big loop around all of the funding a participant has plan managed in their plan. And then we use internal systems to manage service agreements that a participant may sign with you if you are a service provider. So, Elisa, that was amazing information. You were answering questions before I even prompted you there. So, thank you so much for that. Obviously, just before we get to the next section, if you are looking for a plan manager, and Elisa, with the term of we, was referring to Plan Tracker as a plan manager, you can contact our team on 1800 549 670 or pop us an email at hello@plantracker.com.au. We're happy to have a conversation whether you're at a new plan, midway through, or you've just got questions. We are more than happy to help. As we have said, we've got Justine, who's one of our many, actually, I'll say, NDIS Price Guide nerds. We've got lots of Price Guide nerds in the team, and we have a fantastic and very warm and friendly customer care team who are happy to help you and meet you where you're at and really help you to understand as well in that way. Now, Elisa, in terms of what a plan manager is not, so the infamous question I mentioned before, and I tell you, the amount of times I answer this, whether it's on the phone, via email, on social media, it continues to come up. So I'm going to ask you the question so I don't have to answer for once. Is a plan manager a gatekeeper for my funding?
Okay, so gatekeepers. What is a gatekeeper? Gatekeeper is someone who says yes or no. You can come in or you can't come in. And that is not the role of a plan manager. And we really liked the early part of the guide that very clearly says that it's the participant's choice and control. So if you call us at Plan Tracker and say, can I buy this? Then our role is to help you to understand the guidelines that the NDIA put out around claiming. And so we do a lot of what we call the self-direction conversation, which is that conversation to help you understand how does this fit your plan? What are the 7 questions that the NDIA ask you to consider in participant booklet 3 around what can I spend my funding on? And so we won't necessarily sit on the phone and work through each example with you, but what we'll do is we'll point you in the right direction, get you to go and have a look at that and make those decisions for yourself, and then come back and say, oh, yep, here, this is why I think this is a disability support for me and claimable. Because we get claims for all sorts of things, and they're not. Some of them are not necessarily things we'd ordinarily see. So our first response, and which was really pleasing to see, this clearly mentioned in the guide, is that plan managers are not gatekeepers. Our first question is always, hey, this wouldn't be something that's commonly claimed under NDIS funding, but there might be circumstances we're not familiar with. So could you help us to understand a bit more? Can you provide a bit more evidence so that should it later come into question, you can show that you've put in the evidence required to make that claim.
Fantastic. And I, for one, was very excited to see that they addressed this question in the new guide because it's, as I said, it's been one that's been asked online pretty much as long as the scheme has been around and plan management has been around. So we've asked and answered, and I can see Elisa's reading the chat at the moment. So we'll get it back here.
Okay. I'm turning it off.
Oh, can you tell we've done these sessions together for a little while? I know the facial characteristics when she reads. All right, so my final question for you of pre-planned questions, and I'm sure we've got a few from the chat box we'll get to in a moment, but the difference in the role between a plan manager and a support coordinator, because these two are often quite confusing for many of us. And I know that plan managers can fill the gaps where there isn't a support coordinator in place from time to time. So do you want to take us through the differences?
Yeah, so plan management is funded really to provide that administration process around invoice processing, around budget oversight, around alerts, statements, those kinds of things. The difference is that as a plan manager, we're not going to be able to have, we're not funded to be able to spend the time with somebody that it takes a support coordinator to really unpack and understand what's going on for you, what's going on for your loved one, and be able to give good recommendations and suggestions around types of support or where to access those supports. So plan managers in general, you might never meet them face to face. The vast majority of our customers we work with virtually, and through telephone calls, through email, through video chat, for example. And so we're not going to have that same level of understanding of your specific needs that a support coordinator can get to. So we can give suggestions around, hey, these are support coordinators or providers in your region that we've worked with, or this is things we've seen other customers do, or yes, helping you work through those, what can I spend my funding on guidelines, those types of things, helping you with advice around what's a price guide rate for this? What should I be paying for that? How does short-term accommodation work? They're all the kind of typical questions that a plan manager would be answering. A support coordinator would be looking at, shall we explore some housing options? What type of things to look for in a particular type of therapist? Those broader, or not really broader, more specific to you questions, I guess.
Fantastic. All right. Now, I did promise I've got extra questions on top of these, and I've been banking them as we've gone along. So I'll just pop our contact details up on the screen for everyone for just a moment. Now, Elisa, are you happy to give me 2 minutes of your time? I know we're going to be slightly over, but I've just got one very important question that I think we should address. And I'll keep it to one because I always say one and then it's like 5 later. So in terms of plan management, we had a question come in that was, what do I do if my plan manager has taken my funding for the whole year? So now we always talk about whether you can prepay a provider on this one. So I thought we might touch on this. Do you want to respond to that question for us?
Mel, that's actually a really good question. So under the terms of business, which registered providers have to agree to, so the NDIS terms of business, you cannot pre-charge for services. You can only claim for services that have been delivered. So in the case of plan management, for example, what we would expect that to look like is the service fee. In plan management, there's 2 parts to the fees for plan management, and they're covered in a budget set specifically for the plan management fees, which can't be used for anything else, and it's in addition to your other funding. So it doesn't take away from therapy or other supports, it's provided in addition in your plan. There's a setup fee that can be claimed by a plan manager once they have signed a service agreement with you and initiated that contact with you. And so that service fee covers the setup on the portal, the setup in the plan manager's systems, a conversation they may have had with you, creation of service agreement, all those sorts of things are covered under that fee. And then there's a monthly fee, and the monthly fee should be claimed after the end of the month. Now some plan managers do that where it's the anniversary of the date of the start of your plan. I know that's what we do. So if your plan starts on the 15th, we just, our invoice automatically rolls over at the end of on the 15th of the next month, covering the month behind, because that's the service that's been provided. Some plan managers bill everybody on the 1st of the month, that type of thing. But you shouldn't have a situation where you are billed all of your plan management fees up front. If that's happened, I would go back to the plan manager and say, we'd like you to put the fees back, please, until, and bill as service is provided, because it makes it very difficult for you to change plan managers should you choose to, as well as being against the terms of business.
Fantastic. So to the anonymous attendee who asked that question a little while ago, I hope that has answered it for you. And Elisa, thank you so much. I've really appreciated the amount of knowledge you've given us here today. And I also want to give a huge shout out to Justine in the chat box for the amount of questions that she has answered as we've gone along, because there have been a lot. So if we haven't gotten back to you specifically for your question, we will follow up with you personally following today's session. But Elisa, on behalf of yourself, myself, and the fantastic team at Plan Tracker Plan Management, we'd like to thank you all for taking the time to join us for today's NDIS Cuppa questions session. Obviously, with the new price guide focus, we've gone through lots of questions and lots of information here today. If you have any ongoing questions or you'd like more information, you can reach the Plan Tracker team on 1800 549 670, or email hello@plantracker.com.au. And of course, as we have mentioned, if you're looking for an NDIS plan manager, if you're looking for a new one to transfer, or you've just got your initial plan or would like some more information, please feel free to reach out to us. We're more than happy to help. But until next time, on behalf of Elisa, myself, and Justine, and everyone who's joined us here today, we thank you all so much for your time, and we hope to see you online sometime very soon. All right, have a great afternoon, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.